And you probably know this. It's not like that first time when I took the knife hits where I'm like, oh, I'm into this fantastical dreamscape and it's an alternate reality and whoa, this is really cool. It's more like,
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode here at Sobriety University. On this channel, we talk about addiction and recovery-related topics. And today, we're joined by a very special guest, Jaren Scott. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
thank you for having me. I definitely appreciate the invite.
You're welcome. And Jaren, I've found out about him recently, and I've been watching his content. He has his YouTube channel. He has some coaching, and that's kind of where we started talking first. And he talks about self-help, men's development, dating, and it's great advice. I've learned a lot from it and really excited to hear what he has to say about addiction and kind of fill you guys in with some of his insights. So before we begin, hit that subscribe button. It really helps out the channel. Jaren, anything you want to say before we get rolling here?
Yeah, you mentioned my content. I mean, we can do this at the end too. But guys, if you want to
Okay.
know more about me, what I'm up to, easiest way to reach me is Instagram, at Jaren Scott. And you'll have links to my YouTube channel and all the stuff I got going on there.
Cool. Thank you, Jaren. Definitely check that out, guys. It's great content. I watch his videos almost daily, and it's really helped me. So, yeah, we're gonna get rolling here. We're gonna talk about marijuana today and Jaren's experience with marijuana. We kind of had a little connection on that, and I was like, dude, we gotta start talking about this because I think it's gonna be really important to start bridging the gap between addiction and then kind of some of the dating stuff out there because they almost seem two separate things. And I really started to build up a lot of trust when I realized that Jaren was working on quitting weed too, because sometimes when I watch the dating and stuff, I'm like, like they're probably going out and partying all the time. Like, so I can't relate 100%. But when I'm like, okay, these guys are actually working on like their self-development, their emotional maturity and stuff, it's like, okay, sweet. We're all on the same page here. So Jaren, when and how did you start marijuana?
So I actually started pretty young. I was a pretty clean cut kid, kind of milquetoast. I was a real good academic when I was younger. Took school very seriously, never missed any classes, always got straight A's. And I always thought that I grew up in a conservative area, so I always thought drugs are bad. And I had that sweeping generalization of the higher category of drugs. Just anything that affects your body is a drug, but it's bad. And a lot of people still do that today. For example, I'm drinking coffee here, or every now and then I have a little vape, and I'll get a little nicotine buzz going. But it's weird how in our society, especially in the United States, there's a difference between types of drugs. It's almost like if the drug's legal, then it's good, and if it's illegal, then it's bad. So I always thought that all drugs are bad. And I think I was 14 years or so. I was hanging out with a buddy who he went to a rival high school of mine, but he was a good buddy of mine since we were younger. We played sports together and whatnot. And he was known to be a pot smoker, and his dad was known to be a pot smoker. And the area I grew up in was a little more conservative area in a liberal state. So that's an interesting dynamic there. And the idea that was going around when I was growing up was like, oh, if you smoke weed, you're a loser. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to touch this shit. And I remember I was super scared. And one time we were pre-internet, so pre-social media, pre-smartphones. There's not a lot to do when you grow up out in the country. So you're really trying to keep yourself entertained and not getting into too much trouble. So we got up to a bunch of shenanigans every now and then, but it was cold. I grew up in Eastern Washington State. So one night he just brought out a pipe, and he's like, hey, do you want a hit of this? I was like, oh no, I was so scared. I was like, oh no, I can't do this. And I remember taking a hit and didn't really feel anything. So this was before the legal weed industry started taking off. Like now it's all just super high potency, just crazy percentages of THC. But back in the day, I think this is probably like early 2000s or so, we smoked pretty much whatever you could get your hands on. Being in Washington State, we did get really good BC, British Columbia bud back then, but I was so new, I didn't really know anything about it. So the first time I tried it, it was with my buddy. Took a hit or two. There wasn't much in the pipe, so I don't think I got too much of an effect. And then later, we went to it was a playground of the elementary school I went to as a kid. We went to the toys, and we were taking one of my buddies, he had a whole kit, so we took knife hits, and that was my first real foray into marijuana. I remember immediately liking it. I felt like I was in a dream state, which was really cool. It blurred consciousness and kind of that that sleep world. We were talking about dreams on the pre-call. So I've always been a lucid dreamer. I've been able to astral project if I practice it. So I like being in those altered states, not necessarily in the sense that I want to escape reality, which is why a lot of people turn to substances. I wanted to get more plugged into reality.
Mm.
So the first time doing the knife hits, it was really cool. We went back to my buddy's house. His mom was a pot smoker too, so I remember she made a giant bowl of fudge for us, and then just threw a bunch of Cool Whip on top of it. And I remember sitting there. I think we were watching cartoons, and I was sitting on the couch with a bunch of my buddies, and we were just throwing down this chocolate pudding and watching whatever the hell was on TV. And I thought, like, this is pretty awesome. I think at that point, it's probably, and sadly enough to say, and we'll bring this full circle as this conversation goes on. At that point, I think it was the happiest or the best I had physically felt in my entire life.
Wow.
So luckily, I didn't get too into it. Didn't turn into addiction. When I was younger, I was really ADHD or on the hyperactive side. So I was a couple years ahead in school. I was always getting thrown out of class. The teacher would ask a question, my hand would fling up, so they'd make me sit on my hands. And it was really hard because my internal energy didn't match that of my external environment. So I realized that weed was a nice buffer for that. And that'll be a recurring theme in my experience with that substance. So I used it throughout most of high school, but I never really did it with friends. I used it more as a sleep aid. So the room I grew up in, it was formerly a garage. So it was a converted garage. And there's like a little side window that I just open that up, and I just smoke out of that little side window. And it was really just to level me out. I think I used it more as a self-therapeutic type of purpose to level me out, and it really helped. I'd smoke a little bit. I could tinker around on the guitar. I could write music. I'm not a very good visual artist, but I do like little caricatures or comics that I'd circulate around the high school that were fairly popular. I did a lot of tinkering with like erector sets, and I played with microelectronics. To this day, I still like doing old vintage stereo restorations, guitar restorations. So it really it brought my energy down, which was really, really nice. Fast forward, I went to college, smoked a bit in social type environments. I wasn't really using it habitually. However, at that point, I had started drinking, and we can talk about drinking too. So I didn't realize it at the time. A lot of people in college, they start drinking socially. It's more socially acceptable. It gives you that social lubrication factor. And I realized I'm pretty fun on alcohol. Turns out, though, once I got out of college, I had kept the habit up, which a lot of people do. So also at that time, when I came out of school, I was working in the defense industry. So I didn't have a security clearance, but I had a clearance for the company, if that makes sense. So they were very strict, no drugs, no illegal substances, anything of that nature. They would drug test us randomly. And today too, I take myself pretty seriously. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to kick ass at this job. I'm not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize it. And for years and years, I didn't smoke at all. I'd say probably 15 years or so. And I had completely forgotten about my previous relationship with marijuana. Again, it was something more personal. I wasn't really open or public about it. I think even at that time when I was in high school, if someone had asked like, "Oh, is Jaren down? Is he cool?" People would probably joke, and I think they did. They're like, "Oh, no, he's kind of a lame-o, or he's a square, or he's whatever." And so a lot of people didn't realize that, and even now. People don't realize that I have a relationship with it. Guys in my inner circle do, especially when it comes to the dating type thing. It's a joke that I do the 420 snacks and snuggles as my call to action. If you guys have watched any of my dating content, but for 15
works,
years
guys.
or so, yeah. It worked. Yeah, it works. It definitely works. Because you get a different type of girl. You get girls that are super chill. They're not in the party thing. A lot of them are like me. So I'll meet girls that are real resourceful, that are really go-getters when it comes to their careers or what else they're doing in life. And they use it kind of the same way I do, just to slow themselves down a little bit. But for 15 years, I didn't really use it. I wasn't with the defense contractor for 15 years, but I had just gotten out of the habit of using it. And again, remember, during this entire time, I was using alcohol. So there's one point years ago where I was drinking a lot. I was doing a 12-pack of beer with 2 Coors Light tall boys just to fall asleep. So I was really stressed out at this point. I was going through a divorce. I was
Oh,
near
okay.
bankruptcy because I'd failed a business in my mid-20s, and my brother at the time, he was a Marine. He had an accident, a training accident, and then the Marine Corps, and he was in a coma for a while. So I was just the world was just caving in on me. So I was drinking a lot, and that was definitely not a good thing. Fortunately for that, I nixed that habit. That was more for vanity purposes. I started getting really into the gym, focusing on
Okay.
my physical health, my mental health, my spiritual health, and then at that point, it's pretty obvious that alcohol has no room, or it has no business in achieving those types of goal sets. You just can't do it with alcohol. So for a
Right.
while,
And you were
when
saying, I remember you were talking about
yeah,
you were overweight at one point.
yep.
So you've lost a lot of weight throughout your journey. And I'm guessing alcohol didn't help with that either.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point. So I think when I was overweight, that is to keep it on the topic of addiction. That has to do with food addiction. So
Mhm.
I was able to handle the food addiction thing. To today, like I really don't like. I'm a bigger guy, and I just have that type of
Mhm.
build. But I don't really eat a lot. Most of the girls I date,
Hmm.
these little petite things, they eat way more than I do. I'm just like, and I was like,
Wow.
how do I hold so much mass? But for me to be lean or to be not fat, I don't have to I don't have to starve myself, but I don't eat a lot. I don't eat a lot of portions for a big guy like me, which is good, I suppose. In caveman times, I'd be the one who survives, or in periods of famine, because I can hold the
Right.
mass without any effort at all. I know a lot of guys
That's
reach
funny.
out to me and they're like, "How do I put on muscle?" I'm like, "Dude, I've never had that problem." like, like
I was thinking
I
about
eat
this
a
the other
grape
day.
over.
So
Yeah.
I'm the opposite of you. So I'm naturally really skinny. So a lot
Mm.
of times I was like, I wish I would have been fat at one point because then I'd been absolutely jacked right now because people that are big and lose weight, they're the ones that get like huge, like gym shredded.
Yeah, I
Skinny
don't lose the
guys, it
muscle
takes a lot
mass.
more work. Yeah.
When I'm dieting, it feels like my skin is just shrink wrapping around my muscle mass. I'll lose
Oh,
volume,
sick.
and that's getting a little more into the chemistry of it. That's because I do more of carb restriction, so that means you don't have as much glycogen stores in your muscle, so you won't have those like popping 3D muscle effect.
Mhm.
Um, but if I want to, I can. I mean, I'm pretty advanced in the fitness type space in the sense that I've been at it for 20 years and I know how my body works there.
Right.
But I'll do things like I'll fast for a day or two and then be completely
Wow.
carb restricted. I'll do a glycogen depletion full body workout, and then I'll carb load, and not a single carb
Okay.
over what I need, and that way. And then you're a little dehydrated too. It's like what bodybuilders do during a peak week is what they call it. So then, but
Mm.
like usually, if you see photos of mine on Instagram before I go to music festivals, I'm always shredded, and I don't really have to worry about the muscle loss again, having been a bigger guy. So that doesn't
Yeah.
help with the food addiction when you already have a build that likes to hold mass and you like to eat.
Mhm.
So that's something I had to work on. But I noticed, and I think this happened to me, that you switch one addiction for another a lot of times, and
100%.
really I think all addiction is it's doing something that gives the brain like that nice high or that dopamine hit, but it's unearned, and
Mm.
it wants more.
Ooh.
It wants more of it. So the more you lean into it, the more it's going to take to get there. So I think a lot of people, obesity is a huge thing in the US now. I think a lot of people don't realize that there's a psychological factor to it too, and that's the food addiction part. I also do intermittent fasting. So for years I had an
Nice.
unhealthy relationship with food where I'm like, all right, and I would have these internal dialogues like, I got to kill the fat kid, got to kill the fat kid. And then my
Mm.
revelation came
Mm.
when I was like, well, no, I need to feed the fat kid. But the
Ooh.
fat kid doesn't get to eat all the time. The fat kid gets to eat once a day. And I have my
That's great.
minimum. Yeah, I have my minimum things. I need 200 grams of protein a day. So
Okay.
if I only eat once a day and I start with protein, well, by the time you get 200 grams of like actual high quality food source protein, you're completely full. And then I like
Mhm.
desserts too. So I'll do like a little tiny thing of ice cream or like an almond flour cookie or something like that. And I am
Okay.
completely stuffed and I'm still under what I need maintenance wise for the day. So that's a little trick I learned there. But um, going back to the weed thing, for 15 years or so, didn't really touch weed at all. And then when COVID hit, I was doing pretty well in California, getting really into my career again. If I put my mind to something, I take it very seriously, and that is my focus, and I can get to where I want to go very quickly. And then all of a sudden, COVID happened, just kind of swept the rug out from all of us. A bunch of people lost their jobs. I was locked down in Southern California. I know a lot of people around me were stoked, like, "Oh hell yeah, we're getting free money." free money from the government, and a lot of my friends were getting more money than they were making in their jobs. Well, I was doing pretty well. I
Mm-hmm.
made a fraction of what I was making in my job, so of course that
Yeah.
stress came back, and not
Okay.
even the stress, more so it was boredom.
Sure.
For the previous 15 years of my life, I had been doing a lot of things all at once. And then all of a sudden, gyms were closed, stores were closed, they closed our damn beaches. So I like to be outside in nature all the time. Like, oh
Oh,
God, what do I
yeah.
do? So I hired a bodybuilding coach and trained out of his garage. We just trained all day long. And then I'd go home and I'd smoke weed and picked up the guitar again. So that was a good thing. I had put down the
Nice.
guitar when I lost all the weight and got more into sports. I played ball down in Mexico, so I actually brought a guitar down here with me my first time around, and put it down when I started picking up the weights and getting more into that. So COVID did have the bright side. I got back into the music, which is good. That adds a lot of color to my life. But I started smoking weed again, and it was really
Mhm.
just to deal with the boredom. But also, I realized that since I'm a little older, I'm a little more mature, I'm a little more in tune with myself. It had a lot of therapeutical benefits for me too. I was able
Hmm.
to was getting more into spirituality, so it decreases that buffer between you and those other dimensions, which is really nice. It allows that to come in and you can sink into it. And so that was a benefit. And then you also have more of your cerebral type weeds to where I could get really introspective and I could start to go through my own psychology, start to dig up these old memories, these old traumatic things that I didn't even realize existed that I had suppressed for years and years. Back when I was drinking, I remember I'd always think that like I didn't even really like alcohol. It's just I had this
Mhm.
dissonant, weird energy in my gut, and it was very loud, and it would overtake my whole body. And then with alcohol, I love language too. There's a reason people say to drown away your sorrows or to drown it out. Alcohol does that. It takes that energy and it just numbs it and it pushes it back down in there. Well, I realized that wasn't very healthy, and with the weed, I was able to
Yeah.
start to dig into those areas, bring them up to the surface, allow those emotions to be felt, and then put it in my head, and then start to work through the issues. So there was a
Mm.
therapeutical aspect to it too, and that's what I told myself for a while. And I did it for a few years, pretty religiously. I think I did it daily for like 3 years or so. No, when was COVID?
Okay.
2020. So 2 years, not quite
Yeah.
3 years.
Cheers.
And then it gets to the point. The world started picking back up. I started getting back onto my normal grind, and then I realized didn't I never had a bad experience with it, like never any job loss or same thing when I was drinking. I never missed work, never missed any meetings. I was completely functional, but it got to the point where I'm so busy now that I realized, well, the reason I use weed is to slow me down a little bit, but I don't need to be slowed down.
Mm.
Maybe I need to lean into
Mm.
the hyperactivity and
Oh,
allow my natural energy state to take hold over me, because there's so much going on and this could actually be beneficial. So um, this summer I took a month off of smoking just to see if I could do it. Didn't really notice a difference between smoking and not smoking. And then I go to California a lot. I live in Mexico City, but I go
mm.
to California a
Yeah.
lot. And when I go to California, everyone smokes there. So I was
Yeah.
there a month ago, literally, and all my friends are entrepreneurs. They're all really good at business. They've all got their shit together. And um, woke up, my buddy's already hitting a joint, and he's like, hey man, smoke this. And the weed in California is a lot stronger than it is in
Yeah.
other countries. They're the leader, I think, in the legal marijuana or cannabis space. So I did that for a couple of days, and then usually by 3 p.m. I'm just like, God, I'm so high, I don't even know what's going on. But it's not, and you probably know this, it's not like that first time when I took the knife hits where I'm like, oh, I'm into this fantastical dreamscape and it's an alternate reality and whoa, this is really cool. It's more like kind of like I am now, is like, okay, well, this is getting in the way of my performance. Like I'm
Mm.
not, I'm
Mhm.
not as sharp. I'm not as crystal clear mentally or cognitively. And then when
Totally.
it came time at night for guys, because I've got the channel and guys will follow me and like, hey man, if you're in San Diego, let's go hang out. I'm like, oh hell yeah, and I'll commit to it. 6 p.m. rolls around. I mean, this time of year, it gets dark really early up there, and I'm already tired. Like I'm just not in
Mm.
the mood to
Mhm.
socialize. So it got to the point where it started having, again, no major negative effects, but more diminishing type returns where it's like, okay, do I really
Sure.
need this? So coming back from California, I decided to put it down. I did smoke a bit last week, and I went to a concert, like a nice deep house concert, and
Oh, dude. Let's go.
did a little microdose of mushrooms, and then just hit. I call it like my sunny sativas. They
Nice.
make you real sociable, and you just kind of vibe out to the music. So
Cool.
did do that, but again, I'm having the same experience where, all right, I'm not really noticing a difference between using and not using, and I'm
Hmm.
trying to figure out why. But I think because I did a lot of the introspective work and a lot of my spiritual work while using, that once you let the substance go or you change your relationship with it, then that inner work is still done. And I remember I spent a couple of
Yeah.
years every single night, and it was really fun. It was just I created a really good relationship with myself, and it's like doing any substance. Like if you do a trip or something, you go into it with an intent. So
Mm-hmm.
there would be periods with the weed where I'd smoke, and then I'd read, and I'd journal, and I'd meditate. And I started putting together my belief system. And I started building my internal structure. So I think having done that activity was beneficial, which was largely facilitated by the marijuana use. But now, whether I use a substance or not, I don't really feel much of a difference. Yes, it will still heighten my senses.
Hmm.
It for my ear, I play music. So there are certain strains I like before I play, because I can just hear the full range of dynamic sound in my own voice too. I can
Oh,
visualize
nice.
sound, and I can reproduce some really cool notes that if you ask me to do it now, there's no way. I'd sound like the contestants on American Idol that get fucking shit on. But
Nice.
when I get into certain frequencies or brain states, I'm allowed to do that. So I'm not
Okay.
going to. So I'm not going to quit marijuana 100%. But and this is kind of the same way with alcohol. You'll hear me
Yeah.
use terms like renegotiate your relationship with the substance. So I view
Mm.
everything as a tool. Marijuana is a potential tool. However, it's a very powerful tool. So it's like
Hmm.
it's like a super sharp knife in a professional chef's kitchen. If you know how
Hmm.
to use it, that is a damn good tool. But if you give that to a 2-year-old, you're gonna have a bad time on your hands. So you got to be really careful there. So now my relationship with any substance is that they are tools. They do have their potential benefits if used correctly, but you have to do it with caution, because it can also derail what you have going on too. And I think that's about where I'm at now with the marijuana topic.